move on. Okay, I didn't hear it beep. It beeped. Okay. So, that's always a great start, right? Good thing these aren't professional. Okay, so we're going to go over helper joints. I'm going to show you just one kind, but you should know that any way that you feel like you can put an extra joint in to help you, and any way you can drive that joint and have it be predictable, is a good idea a lot of times. So I'm only going to show you like one particular method. Okay, so I'm going to select the wrist. I'm going to turn off these IK joints. I'm going to hide them anyway, I'm going to turn off the FK joints. And so all I can see are, actually, never mind. I'm not thinking straight. Okay, I'm going to hide. That's right. I'm going to hide my IK and my bind joints for now. And I hid the constraints also. So I need a good way to make this forearm deform. So right now, I'm getting a little bit of pinching down here at the end. And we all know that you have your ulna and your radius in your forearm that create that twist, which means that the skin in your forearm, the entire forearm, is creating the rotation of your wrist. Okay, so we need to create that in the forearm. It's also useful in the upper arm to have that halfway down or in the shoulder, right on the shoulder itself. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this elbow from the bind, and I'm going to duplicate it twice. I'm going to delete all of its children of the duplicates. And now I've got elbow helper 1 and elbow helper 2, we'll call it. Okay, now I'm going to parent both of these, in this case, to the elbow joint. So they will move with the elbow joint. Okay, and I'm going to turn their visibility back on for a minute. I'm going to grab both of them. And I'm going to put one about a third of the way down the arm. I'm going to put the second one another third of the way down the arm. So now I've got 3 joints parented to the elbow. The wrist, which we already had, and then we have elbow helper 1 and elbow helper 2. Okay. Now I need to get these joints to rotate a portion of what the wrist rotates. So I can create that gradiated rotation through the forearm. So in order to do that, now I'm going to use the bind joints to do this. So in order to do that, I'm going to go to the rendering editors, Hypershade. Go to the utility nodes. And I need to create a multiply divide node. And I'm going to call this one arm left multiply divide. Let's call it arm lower left. Oh, that's what we'll do. Lower left. Okay. Now the input for this arm is going to be the wrist joint because that's where we want the animator to be able to control it from. So we'll grab the wrist, we'll shift select and grab the multiply divide, and we'll go to Window, General Editors, Connection Editor, and we need to connect the rotation of the X axes. As X is the one pointing down, they're going to rotate on that plane. And we're going to put it as an input to all three of the, well, we'll just do the first, top two, the X and the Y, because we only have two helper joints. So we only need two of these to be used. Okay. Now I'm going to select my multiply divide node, and my input to X and Y are going to be can't do them all at the same time. So one's going to be 1/3 of the rotation. So I need to multiply this by 0.33, and the next one will be 0.66. Okay, and that'll be close enough for what we're doing. Okay, and make sure that this is set to multiply. It is right here. So now let's watch this. If I select this, rotate it on X, then I have these values in here. It's going to take that -40 rotation from that I just did on the wrist, and it's going to multiply it to 1/3 of its value. Okay? Or I could just divide it by 3. You know, whatever you want to do. Undo that rotation. Now I need to plug that in to each of these joints. So I'm going to go back to my connection editor. Let's do this. Select this, reload left. Select this, reload right. And the output of X, because that's my 1/3 value, is going to go to my rotate X on the helper joint. And you select this other one, reload right, output Y to the rotate X, because X is the rotation we actually need, into this joint. Okay. Now I haven't done all the weighting in my arm yet, so let me just create a couple cubes real quick and show you how this is going to work. So I'm going to duplicate this twice. I'm going to put one underneath each elbow just so we can see the results. And I'll zero them out. And scale them down. Okay. Now, if I grab this wrist joint and rotate it, we can see that they're rotating only a portion of what the wrist is rotating. Okay, so that's good. Now all we would really need to do, I can delete those as we're just to show you that it's working, is we need to add these elbow joints to the mesh as an influence object. So we'll go to select those joints, select the mesh, and then we'll go to skin, add influence, option box. We're going to lock influences at 0. Drop off doesn't really matter. They're not going to have any influence to start with. We'll click add. Now those two elbows will be listed as influence objects, and we can actually add weight information to those. And it will create a fall off effect for that, for the geometry. Now, admittedly, this is not, there are things we could do to make this not so we don't need helper joints in this location. You can turn on the skinning method. You can change it to dual quaternion, and it will look a lot nicer by default when you twist the wrist. If you had a gradient of weighting to the wrist and between the wrist and the elbow. But we're not going to use that method because it's hard on computers, and it's good practice to know how to get around it. Because it's not always just a dual quaternion thing. Sometimes it's useful to be able to scale a joint. You can drive the scale of one joint. So like, let's imagine here in the elbow, if we were to rotate this in, it might be useful to have a second joint, duplicate joint here at the elbow that we could scale in and maybe pull in some of the material in the elbow to make it collapse out of the way. Okay. Or it might be useful to have a second shoulder joint just to control, give a little additional control of when the shoulder rotates down, what this coat looks like. Because you may not be able to get all that deformation with the single joint. Anyway, those are all thoughts. Yeah, I think that's good enough for helper joints.